And let's get started. So Jnana Yoga is one of the subjects taught in every teacher training. So it's a common subject for students of yoga. And it remained completely opaque to me until I had a chance to study it intensively. I was in India with a girlfriend, and we decided we would do 9 days of silence. It was very, very imperfect. I think our silence lasted 4 days. But we developed a pattern. We'd do our morning practice, and we'd go to our favorite cafe, have a nice big cup of coffee, and study our scriptures. And the scripture I was studying is I Am That by Nisargadatta Maharaj. And it is mesmerizing. It's such an amazing book, such amazing information. And since then, it's been my very favorite subject. So this morning, I wanted to lead you in little practices in which we look at some of the statements that Nisargadatta Maharaj has made and explore ways of accessing the truth. So that will be the main content of our workshop. But first, let me go through some introductory comments. And Jnana Yoga is known by several names. One of them is self-inquiry or Atma-vichara. And it means to look in and explore that part of you which is permanent and which is truthful, which is unchanging. And even if we reach far enough to find that part that is imperishable, that survives after the death of the body. It's a high goal. It's a very high goal. And these subjects have been explored by great thinkers throughout millennia. And I'm going to start by reading a few lines of poetry which are pointing to the same question. And one is from a poem called At the Foot of the Tree by Ralph Edberg. He's Swedish. He writes, "The individual is only a temporary stopping place where elements that have always existed and that shall always exist, and in where life on its restless journey between various life forms has checked in for a quick visit." What a vision of human life. And now let's look at T.S. Eliot from the Four Quartets. "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know that place for the first time." Isn't that beautiful? So Jnana Yoga is very similar to Raja Yoga, which is another discipline offered in our teacher training programs. But it's using the mind in a different way. Whereas in Raja Yoga, we look at the mind, look at its components, and begin to understand how it's organized. In Jnana Yoga, we use the mind, and we use the mind to evaluate experience and to look for that which is unchanging as opposed to that which is changing. So it's referred to as neti, not this, not that. So it's removing the chaff from the wheat, okay? Removing the impermanent from the permanent. This same issue is there in every religious tradition. The Buddha called it the great mistake, that we mistake the impermanent for permanent, the untruth for truth, the pleasurable and the painful, the impure and the pure. We get very confused around these issues. And he points us on the path to finding that which is lasting impure. And it's so completely fascinating to discover that the great yogis and the great saints tell us it's really not that hard. And that the world of the permanent and the world of the truthful is actually right here in front of us. And I'll give you this example. This is from Nisargadatta Maharaj. He likens it to going bird watching. And it's something I think we've all experienced where the expert beside us says, oh, there it is. There's that rare bird. And we say, wonderful, finally. But I don't see it. And the expert says, well, there, it's on the right side of the pine tree. And we squint, we concentrate, I don't see it. And he says, well, it's green color, and the tail is sticking down, it's a third of the way up, and suddenly we say, oh, there it is. And yes, it was in plain sight all the time. So in the same way, Nisargadatta says, the reality and the truth is in plain sight, but we've conditioned ourselves to not see it. He also says, I'm going to read this to you. Since the self is in you, the difficulty of finding it could not be serious. The self is quite obvious and it's within the experience of everybody. The word enlightenment conjures up the idea of some superhuman accomplishment, and the ego likes to keep it that way. But is simply your natural state of oneness with being. It is accessible to you as the feeling of your own presence, the I am. So he refers to it as I am. We're going to find a lot of different ways that that experience is expressed. It can be expressed as true self, or awareness, or abiding presence, or true peace. But we all have a sense of that abiding presence that is always with us. So what is the obstacle? And why is it so difficult for us? I think it helps us to remember that as babies, we actually resided in that pure consciousness. That's why we love babies so much. And we're uplifted in their presence. But the human race makes quick work of that, and we condition that baby into other ways of thinking. And as the baby starts to individualize and realize it is a separate entity, the ego develops. But our sense of ego is actually something that's conditioned into us. It's like a software package that we've taken in and that we run lifelong. What Nisargadatta says is that the ego is kind of the skin that separates us from the underlying reality. So the job ahead of us is to awaken from that conditioning. And it is often likened to the awakening from a dream. It's a bit similar to a mirage. We've all seen mirages in the desert, very beautiful, tantalizing. But once we recognize that it's a mirage, it doesn't go away. It's still there, shimmering. But when we know it's a mirage, we don't try and get water from it. We see its beauty, but we go straight on to our destination. So in the same way, we see this world and all the associations that we have with it, but we know it's not real. If we were enlightened, we would understand it's not real. So eventually we go from one paradigm to another paradigm, the paradigm of the egoistic experience to the paradigm of this universal consciousness, the true self. And I'd like to share the story of Ramana Maharshi, and many of you may know this, but it bears repeating because his experience illumines the way forward for us. And he probably was the greatest proponent of Jnana Yoga self-inquiry this world has ever known. And our Guru Swami Satchidananda studied with him in 1949, I think, or 1950. So when Ramana Maharshi was a young man, 16, he had this vision, this fantasy of dying. And there was no accounting for it. He was not sick. His close relatives were all healthy. Why he got this obsession, we don't know. Nobody was around, but he laid down and approximated rigor mortis. And with a young man's intensity, he was right there in the experience of the body perishing, the breath stopping, and the soul lifting out of the body. The unique thing that happened is his sense of identity shifted at that moment from the physical body to that essence of light that lifted out. And what's unique is it never left. He said it was like the shruti note in a piece of music. Do you remember how in Indian music there's a drone? In many forms of Indian music, there's a drone sound that is sustained underneath the melody. He said in that way, this sense of his imperishable self was sustained all the way through his lifetime. He had a unique power in that he was able to convey this experience to many hundreds of students. They said with a single glance, he would awaken that sense of soul inside of them. Well, I'm just an aspirant like yourself. I'm not going to be able to awaken you. But it is really fun to start to do these explorations and to start to find our way between the illusions and toward the truth. So I think I'll start with an analogy from Swami Satchidananda. It's a bit elaborate, so bear with me. And the analogy is of a camera and then of a movie screen. And by chance, the word for desire in Sanskrit is asa. And those who are older in the audience would remember that film, when we use mechanical cameras, not digital, the film came to us according to the asa, the 400 asa, high speed, 150 asa, slow speed. Slow speed you used in a dark environment or dimly lit. High speed you used if your subject was in motion. And it completely delighted my Swamiji to see the correspondence with the idea of desire. He said if you have a lot of desire, you can capture lots of pictures. And then he took the analogy further. When your roll of film is done, you take it into a dark room and you put it into pans of chemicals. Some of you probably have done this. My father had a dark room. I know exactly how it smelled. Not very pleasant. But the film has to go into a developer and a fixer, and then it's hung out to dry, and then it's ready for the prints to be made. So Swamiji said in the same way, during the day we capture images. And then there's in a way a dark room. It might be when we're in a hot bath. It might be when we're walking the dog. It might be when we're just resting for a while before dinner. But there's a time when we air out the mind, we go over the events of the day. We're alone processing what's inside us, what's in the mind. And he says that's the developer. We're processing it. And out of that processing, you may come to an image that's particularly exciting or bothersome, and you decide to fix it. And that's when you dip it into the fixer. And it can be something like, yes, those shoes are affordable and it would go nicely with my evening dress and I will buy them. So it's fixed. It's a decision then. Or it could be, yes, that girl winked at me, so I think it's okay if I ask her out. I'll try it tomorrow. You fix it. It's a decision. So this is very ordinary. This is ordinary human mind. It's one of the ways our mind functions. But then Swamiji makes a big leap to the movie theater. And it's again a dark room. Isn't that right? You leave the lit sidewalk, you pay your money, you go in. If you're early, it's a dark room and a blank screen. The projector is on, but what's coming out of the projector is a pure light. There's no image, just a pure light. The movie only starts when the film is put in. And those films, all that drama is actually individual shots. But they're individual frames that have been captured. And as the film runs, this whole drama comes into being. So the point of this analogy is that ultimately we're responsible. It's the choices we made in our dark room as to which images were important and which actions we would take. And then the movie comes into being. So it's wonderful, wonderful examples. A bit scary to think that we're in charge of these enormous lives that we're experiencing and that we're responsible for the successes or mistakes that we're experiencing. But it's truth. It's truth, and it's helpful for us to realize that we're the one in the driver's seat. Here, going back to Nisargadatta Maharaj, the mind can produce a universe. Its powers are miraculous. Oh, yes. He says, having given reality to the picture on the screen. So he's working off the same analogy. Many teachers use that analogy. Having given reality to the picture on the screen, you love its people and suffer with them and seek to save them. You are completely wrapped up in the world of your own making and do not understand that you are dreaming. You don't even want to see because you want the dream to continue. Okay. So where do we start? Where do we start to bring ourselves out of the dream and into a reality? Okay. Our first point is withdrawing from sensory experience. Okay. So our five senses are gathering information constantly. The light in the room, the size in the room, the colors, okay? The presence of friends, the presence of gurus. It's all coming in through sight, through sound, through smell, not through taste, not at this moment. But the senses bring this world into being. And we give great importance to it, as it should be. This world is so magnificent. But the fact is, this world as exposed through senses is something that's in constant flux. It's constantly changing. And what we're seeking for as students of Jnana Yoga is that which is permanent. So this is the first exercise which I'd like you to do. So please, everybody, take a moment to make your seat very comfortable, chair or floor, wherever you are, and to lengthen the spine, widen the shoulders, keep the head well balanced. And let's see what happens when we explore the world outside of our senses. Or I should be saying inside of our senses. So have the eyes closed. Feel the breath moving. We can't actually sit in meditation and close our ears, but it's a matter of where we put our attention. Bring the awareness inward. Bring the awareness away from the sensory input coming from all the senses. Look for the part of you that is in a state of stability and in a quietness, undisturbed by any sensory input. And let's stay there. If you can, do your best. Focus and stay there in that quietude for about 1 minute's time. Om Shanti, Shanti. So I have 9 exercises in all. I don't think we'll get to all of them. But they all point to the same thing. Going into the place that's immobile. Okay? So the next one, I'm going to go straight to the next one because they're very, very similar one to the other. And that is to go to the place of origin, the source. So when that light is projected onto the movie screen, it's a pure light. And it's likened to our pure consciousness. And the light is not affected by the film. It's doing its job. The screen is affected by the film, but the light itself isn't. So similarly, the light inside of us is unaffected by the drama that's playing out in our personal life. Or to use a similar example, when a river comes out of the mountain, its source will be a spring, a beautiful spring. And that spring remains pure, even as the river in its long journey may become polluted, or it may go branch out and go in many different directions, but the spring is unaffected. So likewise, we have a source energy. It's the innate vitality, it's the consciousness, it's the sense of presence, and it's always there inside of us. Now, another author that I really love very much is a Westerner, Isaac Shapiro. He's living in Australia. And one of his books is Awaken the Dream Tiger, or Awaken from the Dream Tiger. I'm not certain of the title. And he says it's not harder than putting your attention anywhere on your body. If I say, think of your left knee, no problem. It doesn't hurt, but I feel it exactly. I know where it is. I feel the energy presence of it. He said, in the same way, put your awareness, put your attention on that presence inside of you, that source presence. So let's go ahead and see if we can make contact. It's that spring, it's that white light, it's that presence that is not affected by sensory input. Let's see if we can find that inside of ourselves. So again, we'll give it just 1 minute of time. So back into your best position, the spine long and the hands very comfortably placed. Focus on the breath for a few breaths. And then go ahead, take that inner journey, find the very center of yourself, that spring, that place where time seems to originate, where your light is prior to any external experience. There's a lot of energy in there. And that's only 2 out of our 9 exercises, so you're going to get high. The next one I wanted to look at is consciousness itself. So consciousness is the context in which everything happens. Okay? At the point of awakening from sleep, it works better if you're not using an alarm clock. But when we awaken naturally, the consciousness is already there before the mind starts its chatter. That's what we want to get to, the presence of pure consciousness. The consciousness, see, we focus on the objects of consciousness, the things that consciousness does. What I want to do is come back to just the presence of consciousness itself, because that's the essence of our being. It's just the presence of consciousness. Shall we try that? That was a very short introduction to it, but let's go ahead. We'll just give this 30 seconds. Sitting very, very straight. Again, Think of the consciousness that is there prior to thought, prior to movement, as you awaken in the morning. See if you can make contact with that consciousness as it is right now in your mind, in your body. Om Shanti. Again, relaxing. We'll just move right on to the next. Being present. And this is there in every meditation workshop. How to keep the awareness in the now. And I'm going to start with a poem. This poem is by Li Po, a Chinese poet. It's just 4 lines. The birds have vanished from the sky. Now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountain and I, until only the mountain remains. Isn't that beautiful? We sit together, the mountain and I, until only the mountain remains. Do you see? And we've all had that experience, usually in the presence of great beauty. When we become absorbed in that beauty and our sense of personal boundary dissolves away, we merge into the beauty. So it's a matter of coming completely into the now, into the present. I can remember a concert by Odetta, 1969, Berkeley, California. But it's still in my mind, because something in the beauty of her music, so far as I know, the whole audience levitated. There was an ecstasy in it. And the ecstasy derived from the beauty completely focused our mind. We became 100% present. And that in itself is a meditation. That's the goal, actually, is to be 100% present. So let's look at this. And I'm going to draw from Isaac Shapiro again. Sometimes from a Western mind we get wordings that really reach our heart. He says, take just one moment between birth and death to see who you are. See where God originates, or yourself originates, in this microsecond. I'm not asking you to try and get anything. If you get something, you might lose it. I'm asking, who are you? What is your experience of you this very moment? You are here in this moment, and we're investigating. If you make effort, it's going to take you out of the now. I'm asking you to have the willingness to be part of the universal. Give yourself totally to the task of the present. Abandon memory. Abandon habits of evaluation and striving. Okay? All right. So that's a tall order. That's a tall order. And I think actually I mixed a little bit of Nisargadatta Maharaj into that. And I'm going to give it to you, give the idea of being in the now with another analogy. Or I'm drawing again from the movie. So the movie, it's individual frames linked together at such speed that we don't recognize that it's drawn from individual frames. Well, you know, our life is like that also. It's individual moments. But we link them together with memory, with expectation, with anticipation, with our relationship with the things around us. What I would like you to do is take this short time, this will be 1 minute again, and see these minutes of life, this 1 minute of life, as a series of nows, individual frames, instead of being linked into a bigger movie. Okay, I think we can all do that. It goes against habits of mind because we want to link. We want to link into the past. We want to link into the present, plan for present. So what I'm asking you to do is be with the miracle of the now, repeating itself over and over, just for 1 minute's time. Okay, let's give it a try. So again, your very best posture. A few slow, deep breaths. Your hands very comfortably settled. What are we going for? We're going, our attempt is to keep the attention in the absolute present, in the now as it arises, moment by moment. So let's begin. Om Shanti, Shanti. Relaxing once again. It's very thrilling. It's very thrilling to realize that these experiences are really accessible. Thank you for coming. Please tune in next time for additional spiritual teachings. Wish you well. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May the whole world be filled with peace and joy, love and light.